Welcome back to the Empowered Athlete Podcast. I'm your host, Maddie Boss, and I am so excited to bring you this conversation today. Here's the thing. I know that there is no one in this space of athletics and this industry speaking about wealth energetics or energetics really at all. There's a little bit of breathwork going around. I'm largely a part of that, trying to really get that in here, but overall, it's really not it's talked about a lot. And the person I have for you today, Miss Sam Skelly, she is an expert on this. And I'm really excited for you to hear her perspective and hear her journey and her evolution and what she has to offer and the insight and wisdom she has in this topic of wealth energetics and how to step into your most abundant life and how this is actually very applicable to being an athlete as well. And I am beyond honored to be the one to introduce this conversation with none other than the amazing Sam Skelly. She's based out of California, San Diego. She's a sought-after international speaker, breathwork facilitator, and teacher. My teacher, I think I got my certification in 2019, and it's been my mission to bring it to athletics ever since then, specifically jiu-jitsu. Founder of Pause Breathwork, whose mission it is to support humanity in healing anxiety, stress, using the power of breath. She has the amazing Pause Breathwork app, which was finally into this world. It took such a long process to get here, but now it's amazing. And thousands of people all around the world are using breathwork on a daily basis and seeing just amazing mental, emotional, physical shifts. And it's so beautiful to watch. Her mission is also amplified by her 600 Pause Breathwork Facilitators. I'm one of them. In 24 countries around the world. She shared her mission on an international platform with appearances on Global TV, Shaw, NBC, CBC, BBC, and it's also been featured in various publications such as Forbes, the Huffington Post, the Elephant Journal, Women's Health, and she's a Hay House author with her book, Hungry for Happiness. I highly recommend that you read it. It was part of our book club, and the ladies loved it. And also just in general, she's an energetics master. So I'm so excited for her to share her mastery in energetics with you. And aside from all of that amazingness, she's just straight up one of the funniest humans you'll ever meet. So I hope you get some laughs out of this because it's really hard not to laugh because she's just an amazing, incredible human. And she's played such an instrumental role in the shifts around money and wealth in my own life. And that's why I'm really, really excited for you to experience her magic because my life has transformed since being in her world. And I'm excited for your life to transform as well. So welcome, Ms. Sam Skelly.
This is so fun. I'm so excited. Thank you for that amazing intro. You're such a pro.
Thanks. So there's a lot of, obviously I want to talk about in this episode, but we've kind of talked a little bit about Pause, but I didn't know if you wanted to just offer anything else for those who have no idea really who you are, the intro I have, but the mission around Pause and kind of what you're bringing in with Pause.
So I struggled with an eating disorder in my early, like late teens, early 20s, which if you're an athlete, I'm sure to some degree there can be a little bit of either body dysmorphia or like messing with our food because it comes from this like lack of unworthiness. I was a dancer for most of my life. And so developed an eating disorder, which was really, really hard for me to break out of because I was constantly thinking about how to feel better, right? I had like my healing to-do list and I was like, here's all the things that I need to do in order to get better. And nothing was working. Nothing was working. And the big thing that I was missing was embodiment. I wasn't in my body. I was thinking about how to heal, but in order for us to feel better, we got to be better feelers. We have to get into our bodies. But the hard thing for me at that time was I didn't want to be in my body. I was like, I want to get out of my body. Like, I don't want to feel my emotions. Like the thought of meditating made me want to barf. Like, I don't want to sit there in silence and do nothing. And so I ended up reading the book Eat, Pray, Love by Elizabeth Gilbert. And she talks about how she went to Bali and she found this medicine man and he like poked her with sticks and whatever. And I'm like, I'll try that. So I booked a one-way ticket to Bali when I was like 20 years old. And I found this medicine man who was the exact guy she talked about in the book. I was like, I'm going to find the guy. And after he did his little stick pokey thing on me, which was like excruciatingly painful and awful, he taps me on the head and he's like, you need to go meditate. And I'm like, oh my Lord, oh God, okay. So anyway, I go to this like meditation yoga situation, the school, and there is no meditation on the class board, thank God. But the next class is a breathwork class. And I looked at the timing of the breathwork class and I'm like, 3 hours? You gotta be kidding me. Like a 3 hour breath, like that's crazy. But anyways, I was like, I believe in divine timing. I'm clearly here for a reason. Like, let's go. So I walk up the stairs and I open the door, and there's this guy who's dressed all in white with this big long beard, and he looked like Jesus Christ. And I'm like, what's about to? Am I gonna get baptized? What's happening here? I don't know if Jesus baptizes people. Anyway, let's move on. So, and then there's like a bunch of people lying down with blankets and pillows, and I'm like, what's going on here? This looks weird. There's like a bunch of people lying down, and there's this Jesus looking dude. Like, what's happening? Anyway, he comes up to me and he says, you are going to feel things in your body that you've never felt before. You are going to feel the highest states of joy and bliss. And you are going to feel like letting go of all of the pain that you're feeling in your body. And this was at a time in my life where I felt numbness and I felt anxiety. Like I didn't feel any, like when people would say, what does your intuition say? I'm like, I don't know if I have one. Like, is this thing even on? Like, I'm confused. So I kind of smiled at him like, okay, you don't know who you're working with here. But anyways, I lied down and I started breathing in the way that he was sharing. He was like, that 3-part breath. And within 3 minutes, I felt this aliveness in my body, this like activation, this like clarity in the mind, this openness in my heart. Like everything just felt so amazing and so good. And I'm like, this is wild. Like, wow, this is really, really, really amazing. And within like, it was a 3-hour class. It felt like we were breathing for 15 minutes. And I like kind of awoke from the experience. And the first thought of my mind was like, why does the whole world not know we can do this? Like, this is amazing. Yeah. And in that moment, I made it my life's mission. I didn't know this, but like, I felt it. Like, I need to teach this to the world. Like, this is going to be my thing. So going back to my eating disorder, I healed my eating disorder by using breath work because I finally was in my body and I could tell the difference between an emotional hunger cue and a physical hunger cue. And then I started teaching breath work, and then I became a student of breath work, and then I started Pause Breathwork, and now I'm just obsessed with it. So here we are.
Amazing. And so along breathwork was the initial part of your journey. Where along the lines did you really start diving into like the energetics or understanding the energetics associated with breathwork? Because you're really shifting a lot into energetics to understand that aspect of it a little bit more.
Yeah, it's like the purpose of breathwork is to take the density in our body and liberate it back into its natural source, which is just energy. And so that fascinated me. And I was like, oh my God, like the reason why people are overwhelmed in life is because they just have so much density in their bodies that's like not liberated back into its natural essence, right? So it's like so dense and stuck in the body. And so I began really playing with this of like, okay, well, we have memories of scarcity in our body from like years and years and years, maybe even past lives. Okay, well, if that's what's happening in our body, then that's sending out information to the field that is giving us more of what we don't want.
Yeah.
You know, if we have wounds in our bodies of like, I'm not worthy of love, well, we're going to constantly attract people who don't give us the love that we need. And so much of my, like all of my work is somatic based. It's all healing, whether we're talking about repairing our relationship to money, repairing our relationship to ourselves, whatever it is, it's like all of it is energy. And if we adapt the top down approach and we try and think about how to feel better, we're just going to keep spinning. But when we use somatic practices like breathwork, like embodiment, like somatic healing, we get into the body and then we adapt the bottom up approach where we shift what's happening in the body so that we can change our mind. And that's what Pause is all. That's the mission of Pause, is body-based healing.
Yeah, 100%. And that has been so incredibly transforming for me to have that shift, because I've experienced that firsthand, constantly living in my head. And I was definitely a culprit of trying to think my way into healing and kind of having those to-do lists of like, let me check off my healing protocol without realizing I wasn't really embodying it, but just more so, again, still in my head around checking it off and being like, why isn't this working? Right. Still kind of in that ego mindset. So when you're able to really shift into that body, like there's actually not much you have to do, which is kind of nice.
It's so interesting. The body knows how to heal itself.
Yeah.
And we have to be with it, and we have to be present with it, and we have to have awareness, but the body ultimately knows how to take the density and put it back into energy through the breath. You
Yeah.
know, it's like we live in a world where we're constantly thinking about, how do I do this? How do I do this? How do I do this? How do I get better? How do I do? And we're so wrapped up in the to-do list and in the doing, that we forget that we're actually just a spiritual being having a human experience. And when we forget that, life becomes really hard, you know.
Yeah.
They're like, if we think all we are is our thoughts, and we think all we are is these physical bodies, then we're gonna have a hard time. It's gonna be like, what the frick is the frickety frickin' point of this human experience? Like, what?
Yeah.
I just wake up and I feel anxious, and then I go to bed and I just do that for the next 100 years. Wow, that sounds fun. But
Yeah.
when we understand like how the game works, and we learn how to play the game, then everything just becomes so much easier, you know.
Yeah, one of the biggest things that really has helped me that you've spoke about in some way or another, and maybe I distilled it into just a simple mantra for myself, is like, how you be is how you do, you know.
Yeah,
So
man.
it really helps me just constantly come back into the embodiment of how am I showing up, you know, what energy and frequency am I carrying, because that ultimately is influencing my actions. And in the industry that I'm in, which is very much focused in behavior change and sustainable change around health and longevity, you know, that plays such a huge role in like how we're showing up. It's not so much what we're doing. It's not eating a balanced meal. It's not even getting enough sleep. Those are physical, tangible things that do support our physical body. But for us to make the shifts that we're looking for, it really requires us to go a lot deeper. And
Mhm.
that is why I'm so passionate about this work, because sustainable transformation is always what people are really desiring, even if they don't know it. They think they just want some weight loss or they want something else, but really they're looking for this thing that requires a deeper transformation, which means you have to be a little bit more vulnerable, a little bit more open to diving into your body instead of, you know, being committed to being locked out of it.
Yeah, it's like anything good happens in the unknown. And it's scary. Like I say, you've probably heard me say this, but like my life feels like a full-time wedgie. Like I feel like it's always a little uncomfortable because I want to grow and I want to see what's possible in these like 100 and I'm going to say 130, these 130 years I have to live. That'd be so cool if I lived to 130. I think it's possible.
I definitely think so.
I eat a lot of beef liver. Apparently like that makes you live long.
Well, you can let me know at 130. I'm pretty sure there's people who've surpassed 100 years, so I have no doubt.
You'll be with me. We'll be hanging out at
Yeah.
130. We'll be like on a yacht somewhere, like, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you know, I want to see what's possible for myself. And I can't see what's possible for myself or possible for my potential if I stay in the familiar. You know,
Yeah.
if I stayed in the familiar, then my business would still be doing $5,000 a month and I would still be coaching like five client, whatever, right? Like I want to always push the envelope and pushing the envelope and seeing what's possible like is really freaking scary. Like I'll just say that like I feel like I'm gonna like shit myself all the time. Like it's a scary thing. It's like, oh my God, am I literally doing this again? Am I taking another chance on this? Whether it's a chance of like shifting my identity or whether it's a chance of like taking a financial risk, which seems like very present in my world today of like constantly taking financial risks and like hoping for the best. Like that feels quite scary.
Yeah.
But it's like in order for me to like really get to where I know like it's possible, like that's what I get to do, you know, and that's what leaders do. And the beautiful thing is like when we move in a direction, the universe responds to our bravery, like
Yeah.
and the universe responds to our complacency as well. Like if
Yeah.
we want to be complacent, the universe will be like, all right, I'll just give you more things that are just mediocre at best, right? But if you're brave and you're trying new things and you're exploring and you're stepping into new territory that you've never stepped into before, and you're, you know, like I started a tech company for God's sake. Like I know nothing about computers, but I was like, let's try this and see what happens. And you know, you've seen me on this journey. It's been a ride. It's like, oh my God, I have a tech company. How the hell did that happen? But right. But it's like every day I just get to learn and I get to explore and I get to embody like the fearless unknown of like, I don't know if this thing is going to like absolutely dominate the world, or I don't know if it's going to fail. And that's the duality that I get to hold. And I think, I truly think that that's leadership. And of course, like failing is always an opportunity, but there's also a lot of lessons in that because I fail more than I succeed. And it doesn't look like that on paper, especially when you like read my bio and shit like that, or like whatever. But you know, it's like in order for me to figure out what works, I have to do a million things that don't work.
Yeah.
And that process is it's sucky sometimes of like, oh my God, it didn't work again. Like, yeah, okay, let's try this again. Let's try this again. But at the end of the day, it's like that's what life is all about, of like trying and learning and failing and growing and seeing what's possible, and ultimately like how can we open up to the unknown as much as possible just to see how much magic we can attract.
Yeah, I love that. And I feel like that's a great segue into just really defining in your own terms, because I'm pretty sure, again, this is a very new concept and conversation for people, but in your own words, like what is wealth energetics, and what is the difference between being rich and being wealthy?
Hmm. Yeah. So when I think of the term rich, I just think of like a person with shitloads of money, right? Which is cool. Like that, like if that's what that person wants, amazing. And I think the decision to be rich, it gets to have new energy. Sometimes that word can be a little taboo, or it can have like a lot of like, you know, people are rich and they just don't give a shit, but that's not the case. Like people can be very wealthy and be very, very heart centered. So I think rich is like just in terms of like money, right? Like we're talking money when I think rich. And this might come down to a little bit of semantics, but this is just the way that I see it. And then when I think wealthy, like the energy of wealth, I think of the feeling of holistically, like we can be rich like on with money, but then the other areas of our lives don't necessarily feel quote unquote rich. Or so when I think of like a wealthy person, what I think of is like the financial abundance where we get to create what we want to create, serve how we want to serve, do what we want to do, not in excess, like crazy amounts. Although again, if that's your journey, go ahead and do that. You can do that. But that like wealth with our body, like feeling wealthy in our body, feeling wealthy in our relationships, feeling wealthy with our connections, feeling wealthy with our businesses and how we do things and how we create and how we lead and all sorts of things. Like there's that feeling of wealth. It's just like abundance, you know, and abundance and wealth are very interchangeable. In fact, they are basically the same thing. It's like when people think of abundance, oftentimes they think money, but there is abundance in everything always. There's an abundance of air we breathe. There's an abundance of food that we eat. There's an abundance of love that we can give and receive. There's an abundance of hugs and connections and all sorts of things. Like there's abundance exists everywhere always. And the energy of money is the same as abundance, same as like the abundance of nature. So if we're having a hard time fulfilling our system with the energy of abundance through the pathway of money, then do it somewhere else. Like if you're thinking like, man, I'm always living in scarcity, let me work on my money to get into abundance. It's like, just don't do that. That doesn't make any sense. Where do you feel naturally abundant? That could be like, I get an abundance of sleep every single night, right? Or I can have like there's nature's super abundant, right? Or whatever it is, my relationship feels really abundant. My relationship with my child feels really abundant. Like where do you feel that energy, and how can we fulfill the system with that energy? Because according to the fields, like the fields don't know. They're not going to be like, oh, over here you're not feeling it over here, so you're not going to get it over here. Do you know what I mean? It's like it's the resting position that we choose to be in every day of abundance, of like there is always more. There is more than enough. And that's not just money, but money is absolutely included in that. Yeah. And so when we're working to change the relationship we have with money and we want to receive more, it's about fulfilling our systems with the energy of abundance and then opening up our ability to receive, right? Some people can't receive love. All right, well, let's work on that, right? That's some somatic healing we got to do, right? Yeah. Some people can't receive compliments even, or like some people, you know, can't receive money through their business. And then they are like, oh, it's a marketing issue. It's like, no, it's not. It's you. You're the issue, right? So it's like when we shift us, I know that everything that happens in pause is directly related to me. Yeah. Even though we have people, lots of people working there, it is connected to my umbilical cord, right? Like that is like the energy that I am in. If I am in scarcity and I'm fearful of something, it is going to, my sales are going to show it that week. Yeah. Oh, we didn't do many sales, or we didn't have much cash collected, or whatever. When I'm feeling like trusting and abundant and surrendered, and I'm connected to my vision, and I'm not stuck in the weeds and the details, but I'm holding the vision of what's possible. And I have this like lighthouse energy to me, right? Where people are reading my seeing my YouTube channel or listening to my podcast or following me on Instagram, and they're just like, there's something about her energy that I want to be a part of. Like, then everything begins to move again. And it's just so crazy the way that this works, because I can see it like so clearly. And over the last 90 days, like I've been going through like a lot of like really intense processes. And so I haven't been as like out there as I normally am. Like, I haven't been as like joyful and light and bright. And so like we didn't go backwards, but we didn't grow as much as we normally do, you know?
Yeah.
And that's just the way it is. And that's what I see. And that's what I've seen over the last 10 years of being in business.
Yeah, it's been really interesting to view business from that way, because it almost feels like there's less pressure, and there's like, it's just easier solution. Like you said, like when you know that this is the way that a week or a month goes, it's like, instead of just getting into the details of like, oh, what are all the things that we could do, or what we do, it just becomes really simple to like, how was my energy that month?
Yep.
You know, and then that is the one thing we have control over, is our frequency, our energy, is how we're showing up. And then just making that commitment to shift that and to embody that new frequency, that is so much easier than like trying to work out those details of like the tangibles of all these different offerings and funnels and like all of that, which is actually interesting that it's kind of less work, but it is a commitment still.
It's still a commitment, because there's times where I'm like, I'm working and I can feel my energies dropping, right? I can feel myself getting into being reactive or getting annoyed or whatever. We we use this communication system at Pause called Slack. I don't know if you use that, but yeah, okay. So I can feel myself like getting into what I call a Slack attack, where like I get annoyed. So I just start like message, you know, and I'm like, whoa. Yeah. And so it's in those moments where it's like the highest and best thing that I can do right now is shift my, like sit in that chair in my office, shift my energy, get myself from fearful, doubtful, scarcity into abundant, magnetic, visionary, and then come back and proceed. But that takes like a choice, because it's like the easier thing to do is to just power through, go. And like in your world with athletes, right? There's a healthy amount of like powering through physically that helps us grow. Yeah. But when it comes to energetics, we don't want to power through. We want to recalibrate. And that's the big difference. And so like I was a fitness competitor for many years, and there was like a healthy amount of like being super resilient, going to the gym a shitload in order to like build and grow. And there was days where I'm like, I don't want to do this, but I'm going to do it anyway. And then that's the pathway of like growth physically, but energetically, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
We can't power through. We got to recalibrate.
Yeah, a lot of what happens in the athletes I work with is a lack of motivation and a physical, it manifests physically, but it also is emotionally and mentally, of burnout and exhaustion. And those are usually the signs I look for to be like, this is, yes, you are doing too much. And so it's like coming back into the body, learning how to slow down, learning how to address all of the narratives, all the healing that needs to happen to be able to find that balance between being and doing. But that is so prevalent in what I work with the athletes. And just in case, because I know in our world, this is something we can talk about and kind of talk about in our sleep. It's so easy. But for those who have maybe no idea, like the person who has never even heard this term, breaking down like what exactly is scarcity mindset versus an abundance mindset. Because I really believe there's people out there that maybe don't have any idea or even operating in scarcity.
Yeah. Scarcity is like
rooted in like subconscious.
Yeah. Scarcity is like the not enoughness. I'm not enough. There's not enough. It's not enough. We're not enough. He's not enough. She's not enough. It's like a constant feeling of not enoughness. Like no matter what it is, there's not enough. It's like this this like thirst for more, thirst for more, thirst for more, even though you are satiated. It's like convincing the body that it's not enough. It's not enough. And so when we operate from scarcity, we're sending out a message that it's not enough. So we're not gonna get any more.
Yeah.
Right? Like the law of attraction doesn't work like your mom, where you're like, I feel bad. Okay, well, here's a muffin or here's a cup of soup. Let me give you something good. The law of attraction is like, if you're feeling that way, you're gonna get more of what you're feeling,
Yeah.
which is amazing and shitty all at the same time.
Yeah.
Right. And then so an abundant mindset is adapting a mindset and an energy of it is enough, there is enough, I am enough, it isn't, like we are in, like enoughness, despite what the mind is saying about reality. So the mind can say, like, what do you like? This is not enough. I only have X amount of dollars in my bank account, or I'm only making X amount of money. It's not enough. It's not enough. It's not enough. Okay, that might be true. That could be true. And adapting a mindset of enoughness will help pull more to us, will help magnetize more to us. Because the law of attraction suggests that when we are at a certain vibration energetically, we are going to be an energetic match for what we desire.
Wow.
Many people are and like whatever you are making on a monthly basis is what you are an energetic match for. Now
Yeah.
you have the capacity and the ability to be an energetic match for whatever you want, but it also takes a lot of work and a lot of effort and a lot of choice and a lot of going against the stories and the programming and the patterns and the beliefs and really choosing something else, choosing something else, choosing something else every single day. So that takes time. And that takes awareness. I shouldn't say time. It actually doesn't take time. It takes awareness and it takes presence and it takes commitment.
Yeah. 100%. And so for those who may want to make that shift, what are some, I mean, I already have an idea of some of these, but what are some practices that you recommend to help cultivate this embodied wealth, this abundance? Because
Mm.
it is an energy to feel, but what are some of the practices that you recommend for people who maybe are just getting started, something that can be easy on the system that
Mhm.
doesn't seem too out of reach or too
Mhm.
different to where their body and system wants to shut down?
Mhm. I would say cultivating and creating a vision that is just a little better from where you're at today. Like, don't go for the $1 million months and the yachts and like, let's not even what is a vision that we can hold that feels inspiring enough to pull our energy field into it, and it's something that we can come back to. I call these anchoring stories, right? What are some anchoring scenes and anchoring stories that when I am feeling in scarcity, I can bring my awareness to, like, the moments. So for me, one of mine is my big hairy audacious goal is like my BHAG. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that term, but the sort of like North Star that I have for my business, for my app particularly, is to have 1 million people on the app. So one of my anchoring scenes is me being on a private plane, pulling up my laptop and seeing the back end of my app, seeing 1 million people on there. And like, that's not a little bit better from where I'm at right now. That's like milestones from where I'm at right now. But it, like, that's one of the things that like helps me visualize and feel into what is coming. Because if I know that I'm the conscious creator of everything, I'm going to create that. I'm going to
Yeah.
create that. That's just a matter of time. I'm going to create that. And so that's an example, but I want you to go even, like, bring it down even more. Like, what if you were to make an additional $5,000 a month? Or what if your relationship was to be just a little bit better than it is today? Or what if your resting position of where you feel on a daily basis was a little less anxious and a little more peaceful? And what if we were to have a vision of what that is, right? And you can do this in, I know, Natty, you've done this with me many times, but writing a letter from that future version to who we are today,
Yeah.
right? Like really, really creating what that is. Like, here's what we are, here's what I'm doing, here's how I feel, here's what I'm eating, here's what my body feels like, here's what I'm looking like, here's my relation, and communicating from your future self to who you are today. And then you can take it one step deeper. And if you want to record it, like, I have an audio on my phone that I listen to every single morning. I do my morning meditation, breath work, and then I listen to this audio. So I listen to it when I'm nice and clear. And I recently recorded a new one. So it's June 23rd, 2023. and I'm explaining to myself today what has happened, what has transpired, all of that kind of stuff. And so it helps me like get into the awareness of intention, of vision, of planning, of like, ooh, what is that going to be like, right? It's like this energy of curiosity, because where we're at today, like where I am today and where you are today and where everyone listening is today, if we look at our reality, all this is a manifestation of what we focused on over the last couple of years, right? This office, my bank account, my relationship, my friendship circle, my employees, whatever it is. It's like I created this intentionally or not.
Yeah.
That's the important piece. We're manifesting all day long, intentionally or not. So for us to evolve, we have to choose, we have to decide, we have to hold a vision for something greater.
Yeah, I love that. And to bring it back into kind of breath work for a moment, you know, because this is one of the tools practically that you can start integrating, that she said, like, how can you just improve that 1%? You know, can you be a little less anxious, a little bit more grounded in your body? That's what breath work is for. You know, that's a really easy way to connect with something that you literally have available to you 24/7. It's free. It just takes a moment to recognize and pause, literally, to just connect with your breath. And that can just be one way that you make that shift. And then that accumulation, these little glimpses that you experience, can eventually stay a little bit longer. And then from there, you will, it's literally inevitable. It's so amazing every time students who do breath work and they integrate it realize that the actions that they take following how they shift their embodiment, it's inevitable that it's different, because they're just operating from a different space. And those actions are just more empowering, which is causing them to, again, be more aligned with that version of them that they're trying to call in. So I definitely recommend kind of going back to breath work to integrate that, because that's such an easy tool that you have available, and you don't have to do anything super crazy intense or long or 3 hours. I've seen shifts in 30 seconds, you know, and
it's crazy.
And that's all it really takes. But what you said is really important. And this is like, I don't know how to maybe integrate this, but you said choice, right? Choice is such a big thing. But when we have so much trauma locked in our body, we have many experiences in our body from the past where we had no choice, or it felt like our choice was taken away. You know, I think this is where, if you want to speak to maybe just like the importance of that healing process, like this is about wealth energetics, calling in abundance. However, like you said, when we have so much density in our body, we're kind of limited in our receptivity and our ability to receive more coming in. And how do we free up that tissue? How do we free up the system to be able to receive? Well, it requires moving that density. Moving that density requires being committed to the inner work, committed to the healing, you know? So I wanted to see if you had any thoughts or insight on that aspect of choice, because there may be people that think, oh, well, you know, choice is easy for you versus me, but it's really just these locked stories that they have around, they never had choice before. And they never had that sense of autonomy and the ability to choose. And just like, that is so important to come back into so much of empowerment, which is the point of this podcast in a lot of ways, is realizing that it all starts that you have choice. Like you said, you're the conscious creator.
Yeah. I would start with like really small things that you can choose and be discerning about, of like, I'm choosing to not go out tonight because I don't feel like it.
Yeah.
And really listening to the body and not moving into people pleasing patterns of like, I should, but I said I would, but it's like, no, I don't want to, and I'm going to choose that.
Yeah.
And when we make those micro decisions of like choosing, like being choiceful about what we put in our body, or choiceful what time we go to bed, like when we can realize that everything's a choice and I get to choose everything. Because you're right, there's a lot of people who live a choiceless life, but it's by default based on past trauma.
Yeah.
They don't think that they can choose. It's like, yeah, you can. And if you're with someone who says you can't choose, leave them, because you are a sovereign being and you get to choose what you want to do in this life. And if someone's telling you you can't do something, like, fuck that.
Yeah.
right? So it's really about owning ourselves and owning our sovereignty and saying yes to life and choosing what we feel in our body is the right thing to do. And if you don't trust yourself yet to choose those big decisions of like, should I invest in a program or should I move across the world, then start with small things that don't matter.
I
Like choosing what you want to wear, like taking a moment of like, what do I actually want to wear? Okay, cool. I'm going to wear that because I want to.
That would be really insightful. You can realize how indecisive you are with little things
Hmm.
like that. Making a choice on the menu,
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh
like
yeah.
indecisiveness. That was something I adopted a long time ago. Choice minimalism,
Oh, I love that.
like amazing. Like just give myself two options.
Dude,
And then,
that's
like,
really good.
yeah, like that, because I bought into the narrative, which was definitely embedded from childhood, that my whole family is always indecisive. So I took that on as my own. I'm indecisive, indecisive. And that also played a role in owning a business. I'm like, man, I'm just so indecisive. And then I realized this is like a story I really need to let go of. So
Mhm.
I kind of adopted this choice minimalism idea of like, and part of it is also like if it's a heck yes or a heck no, which I think is something I learned from you. It's either a
Mhm,
fuck yes or a fuck no. And like
mhm,
it really
mhm,
made decision making a lot easier because I noticed I was
mhm.
living a lot in the gray area. But when I took that away and just gave myself
Yep,
the option to be like, it's a clear yes in the body or it's a clear no based on an expansion or a contraction,
yep.
it made decision making so much easier. And literally starting with small things, like you said. So I really, really love that advice.
Yeah, little tiny things, little tiny things. I love that choice minimalism. When you go to like the friggin' Cheesecake Factory and there's
Oh
like
my God.
25,000, I'm like, shit, bro. Like, I don't know. Like, don't make me. But then you go to some menus or some restaurants and you get the menu and there's like four things. And I'm like, oh my God, this is so great. It's like people don't want to be given choices. They want like this. So,
Yeah, yeah. So I'm curious because we haven't really dove into it. How has your relationship to money shifted, and what are the current beliefs around money that you hold versus what you were raised with? Like I know that there's a lot that people can resonate with, at least what you were raised with. Money doesn't grow on trees, money is
mhm.
limited, and I know that has shifted immensely for you. Um, and so, what are some of those things for you?
Yeah, I grew up in an interesting way. So my parents got a divorce when I was 4 and they both remarried. So I basically had like 4 people, my mom, my dad, my stepmom, my stepdad, who influenced my beliefs at a fairly young age. Definitely my stepdad. My stepmom came in a little bit later, so maybe not as much, but what was interesting, if we just look at my mom and my stepdad, my mom is very abundant thinking, very generous, and my dad was like the one that was shopping at like the discount stores. And, he's always still looking for a break. Like I was with him the other day, we were up in Washington and we were at Fred Meyer and he was like using coupons. I'm like, Dad, like you are wealthy. You don't need to use whatever. Right. It's just funny. I'm like, really? So I had these 2 examples in my life growing up of like kind of like more of a scarcity mindset and more of an abundant mindset. And so I remember like when I was with my mom, it felt so good to be like, oh, we can do that and we can do this. And it was, here's the funny thing, actually, my mom doesn't actually like manage the finances. My dad does. So she didn't really know. And I think like in that case, it was like, she was like a little bit ignorant, but it's okay. It was interesting to see that. Right. And so I remember that just feeling so good to my nervous system of like, oh, that's so good. And then when I got older, I was like, okay, well, I want to have my dad's financial savviness of like investing. Like I'm a big investor. Like I live within my means. I've got a multi-million-dollar company, but you wouldn't be able to tell if you looked at my lifestyle because I do live within my means. Like I'm not super flashy. I'm not big on like brand names. I just like have beautiful things that I love, but it's not in excess. So I love investing and I love being really smart about my money. So I was like, I want the financial savviness. I don't want to be ignorant to it. I want that, but I also want to adapt this like energy of anything is possible and I can attract as much wealth that is possible. And I want to do it in a way that feels so good for me and so good for everybody. Like I like the vision that I have is like when people pay me, they are so stoked. Like they're so excited to invest in my programs because they know that their life is about to change. And that's the relationship I want with my clients. Like I never want people to feel like, oh, I don't know if I should do, like, I don't want that. I don't want that energy in my companies. And I don't want to work with someone who's like who has that. And so that's what I call in is like I'm calling in clients who can think for themselves, can feel for themselves, like know that investing in pause is the right decision for them. They're so amped about it. They're like, they totally see it as an investment. And that's just like the energy that I put out there. And so that's the energy that I put out there. And that's the energy that I get. Like our clients, I mean, you're inside of our programs, right? It's like the people that come through pause are just, I'm like, where did you come from? You're so amazing. Like it's just amazing, right? And so that growing up, I really got to see like, okay, I want to have the energy of what my mom has, but I also want to be financially savvy like my dad. And so I kind of adapted both of those things simultaneously. And for those of you listening who are like, okay, well, both my parents lived in scarcity and I had no hope, that's okay, because guess what? There are so many examples of people doing this now. It doesn't have to come from your parents. And even now, like some of the money stuff that I'm working on now of like really expanding into my next level, like I'm not going to learn that through my mom and dad. I'm going to learn that through my guides or other people who have done it, right? Other people who have grown large tech companies in the health and wellness space. So there's so many teachers out there, and there's so many role models out there, and there's so many people that we can model based on where we want to go next, that if you had an upbringing of scarcity, it's okay. You can shift it.
Yeah, I love that.
Mhm.
And so that kind of leads to a nice aspect of like this idea of investing in yourself, as an entrepreneur, likewise for yourself, and just business owners in general. A lot of the people that are in my space and that generally do that understand to a large degree the importance of investing, because it just goes hand in hand with entrepreneurship. Whether you're outsourcing, hiring a team, or you're expanding your knowledge or hiring a mentor, it's usually hand in hand. But really bringing this concept of investing to athletes versus just spending on something or a cost, really shifting the mindset and the paradigm around investing in their health and their performance and longevity. I find that some athletes are shifting. I feel that part of my role is to bring that shift into the space, but I am only one human. And so I'm working on it, but to further shift, their view on investing, like what advice would you give, athletes maybe specifically, or people who don't really understand that idea of investing? Because some people just think of investing as like investing in stocks or that type of investing versus like lower level investing, like investing in a really good vacuum is an investment, right? Versus just getting the cheapest one because you're going to be cheap about it, right? Like really seeing like the value of investing. And so like giving them advice on how to take the leap in investing in their health.
Yeah. It's all about going to the outcome, right? I'm all about the resource that we don't have, like that we can't get back, is time. So if I can invest in someone to help me collapse time to get to my goal quicker, I'm going to do that over and over and over and over again, right? Like I wrote Tony Robbins a check for $100,000 so that I could collapse time and get into his world and understand how he sees the world, because I love the way he coaches and I love the way he does things. And so like that for me is like a huge investment. I mean, it's a huge investment from a money perspective, but it gave me a huge ROI, right? And I really believe like we are our best investments, right? Like, I do real estate investing and crypto and all this crap, but that's nothing compared to the money that I'm putting in myself in order to grow myself. And that's really important. Like any single time I take a bet on myself and I invest in myself for something, whether it's a therapist or a coach or a program or a certification or an app or whatever it is, like, and I show up for those things, and I know I get my money's worth plus more because I'm constantly growing and evolving myself. You are an amazing example of this. Like I've seen you invest in yourself time and time again and evolve over and over and over again. And the shift that I've seen in you in the last 4 years, holy crap, it's amazing. So amazing, because you are so congruent with what you teach, and you're so congruent with this message of constant growth and evolution. So I mean, any investment that we make in ourselves, providing it's coming from a very heart-centered place, is such an incredible investment.
Yeah. And just to talk to I wouldn't say objection, but the biggest fear that I often see is fear of disappointment or failure in making that investment, but feeling like they're not able to, they're not going to show up for themselves, or they're going to fail because they've always fallen off track, or they're not sure they can make the commitment, and I support them in working through that. But from your own perspective, Do you have any insight to offer in that regard around, making that commitment and, really allowing that to be an opportunity to expand? But I think gender comes into a big part of that conversation.
Yeah, it's like we can't base past evidence on where we're going next, right? We've got to recreate a new way. So if we invest in yourself from the place of like, this is going to be different this time. Invest in yourself from a different place, because when we do that, the outcome's going to change. If we're like, oh, I'm going to invest in myself, but look at my track record of everything I've done terribly before, it's not going to work, right? So it's really, really, really important for us to like decide in advance how the journey is going to go. Intention is so powerful, right? Setting the intention. How's it going to go? How's it going to feel? What are we going to do? And really pushing that as much as possible and not letting ourselves use past evidence for how it's going to go this time. Because it's just not there.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's so good. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for spending this time just talking with us about all these different elements. And there were so many golden nuggets and insights and takeaways. I'm so excited for you guys to just really dive in and take some time to integrate just kind of what she spoke about, because this can be very new concepts. And so just to really understand, if you have any questions, you can always reach out to me. Be more than happy to just support you in that and understanding it and being able to integrate this information, because it really is one of the most powerful things you can do. Because as we said, energy is everything. So addressing your energy is going to be the first step to be able to make any tangible changes that you're looking for in your life, whether it's performance or whether it's just life or relationships or career, whatever it is. But what is the best way for people to connect with you?
Yeah, I would say Instagram is kind of where everything starts, and on my account at Samantha Skelly, and then pausebreathwork.com for all breathwork stuff, whether it's the app or the facilitator training.
Yes.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say one last thing that you had mentioned it earlier, but this idea of the people coming into your world. When I don't know if I ever shared this story, but like, I remember when I think it was just an Instagram ad or something, or like a story that came through when I first saw that you were doing the facilitator training. And I remember kind of always being in that masculine energy of like, oh, just one more tool to add to my arsenal to teach athletes. Like that was my intention of first signing up. I was like, I'm going to teach, breath work, like breathing. And it was just really interesting because I couldn't really, I don't want to say, no, I guess justify is the right word. Like people kept asking me why I was making this big investment, why I was going to San Diego, why I was doing all these things. And I couldn't really explain what it was that I was even investing in. I don't actually know like what I'm investing in at all. I had the one experience with you, 20 minutes at Pays to Be Brave, I think the year before, 2018. Yeah. And I was like, I just remember feeling really good after that. It was like riding this high in San Diego. It was like just this best feeling. And like, just something was like, this is it. Similar to you in Bali. I was like, this is what I need. Like, this is the missing factor. But I was under the impression it was the missing factor for my athletes, which it was, but it was actually the next step for my
that. I love that.
It wasn't until I got into the live immersion training where I was like, holy shit, this was a calling for me. And then it's that shift and in that embodiment. And from that space is where I'm supposed to be teaching. So it's really good because I had no idea why I was even doing it. I'm like, I don't really know what this is. Like, stop bombarding me, people. Like, I'm just teaching people how to breathe. I don't know.
Yeah, I love it
because I trust.
Yeah, the wisdom of the soul is really smart.
And it's literally just been absolutely incredible since that. So I just wanted to share that story because it does take a lot of surrendering and taking a leap into the unknown and trusting your intuition. And if you are disconnected from your intuition, I still believe that there can still be some type of inkling in your body, right? And that's why I often go to like,
for sure.
Oh yes, or
100%.
Like even the smallest contraction, like everybody knows, quote unquote, what a gut feeling is.
Yeah.
And when a gut feeling feels good or feels bad. And like, just follow that and try not to think that, So that was kind of the journey that led me to where I am now and led us to this podcast. So
yeah, I love it. I'm so proud of you. You're the best.
I love you so much.
You just kick ass. Thanks for
So I
having me
will
on.
put your information in the show notes for you guys to connect with her. You've got to check her out. The funniest reels, the funniest content, and obviously very informational and powerful content too. And being in her energy. Again, if you want to expand your energy into this realm, and it's important to be in community with people who are doing this work, be in the energy and the space of people who are doing it to let you know what's possible instead of being with the people that you're currently with, operating from that level of scarcity. Then as Sam said, you're going to be continually living and attracting in that way. So this is I would say, very easy, subtle way to start expanding that safety to explore that, because it's just as simple as following somebody, right? Like following somebody, being in their energy, watching the feed that you are taking in, and then adjusting your feed. You're on social media anyway, so why not have feed that's going to help you expand, help you feel a little bit more connected to this vision that you have for yourself. And she's just an amazing person to bring into your world that can shift immediately. So if you guys love this episode, I would love for you guys to tag us on social media. Again, her handle will be in the description, and let us know any insights or takeaways. Shoot me personal messages, as you guys always do. I'd love to hear, how this landed for you. And other than that, thank you again, Sam.
Thank you.
See you in the next episode.
See you guys.
Bye.